Heather Smith and welcome to Cloud Stories, a podcast exploring the accounting and business apps community. Today I'm trying out something new. I've given it the big, hairy, audacious title of the Accounting, Innovation and Technology Buzz, Current News and Trends and Analysis. Joining me on the show is Trent McLaren. You might recall I've interviewed Trent on the podcast show previously. We've been friends for many years and I've always enjoyed our conversations because he has well thought out insights about the industry. Currently, Trent is the head of the Accounting and Bookkeeping Channel at DiviPay. In his past life, Trent has probably worked at more accounting technology companies than most, notably Practice Ignition, Intuit and where I met him at eWay. He's also worked for the outsourcing company TOA Global. In this episode, we talk about the, as I mentioned, current news, trends and analysis of the industry. So we talk about the many acquisitions that are happening in the industry at the moment. We talk about the Intuit and MailChimp and DataDeer acquisition. We talk about some recent feature releases with DiviPay and their relationship with Slip, S-L-Y-P. And we also talk about a few reports that have recently been released. So let me just backtrack on that. What some of the technology companies have done is they have used their aggregated anonymized data, looked into what is happening within their solutions and within their client solutions, and they surfaced some trend reports there. And we as the community can benefit by looking at them and seeing how they are relevant to ourselves. So the first report is by Practice Protect, and I'll just briefly explain. Practice Protect is a cybersecurity solution that sort of wraps a bubble around your accounting or your bookkeeping practice. And what that report has done has looked at all of the app usage by their clients. And what they've done is been able to analyse what apps are being used, what percentage of apps are being used, etc. So it's quite interesting. And then they also break it down by catalogue and categories where how the apps are actually being used. So that's quite interesting, but we dive into that. And then also there is an Inventory and Order Management Trends Report, which has been released by Sin7. And again, that's another interesting report. So that's sort of the type of stuff that we're going to cover in the very short episode coming up. I want to make it clear that I do currently work with the team at DiviPay to help them connect with the accounting and bookkeeping community. If you'd like to read about the way I work with accounting apps, please visit endorsementdisclosure.com. You can always see my strategic partners as they are clearly labelled in pink on the headers of all of my social media platforms. So, without further ado, I invite you to listen to the Accounting, Innovation and Technology Buzz with Trent McLaren. Hey Trent, thank you so much for joining me here today on Cloud Stories. Really wanted to get you on the show because I know that you're across all the accounting technology happening across the world. So I thought it'd be really good to just sort of have some banter and go through some of the news items that have been happening recently in the account tech world, because there's so much has been happening, hasn't it?
I mean, Heather, you know me. I love good banter and I love accounting tech. So this is a great segment for me to feature on, and I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So what has been happening in your world? Let's put the accounting tech aside for 30 seconds, 60 seconds if we can. What's happening in your world?
Look, my world, I mean, it's been a pretty interesting year overall for me personally. I think just trying to come back to Australia, move to a new country. I had my stint with TOA at the start of the year, which was good and, educational. I learned a lot in that point. And then obviously now back at DiviPay. So, in DiviPay, not in back DiviPay. At, started with DiviPay and loving that ride and journey. And so are a lot of everyone that I'm listening to this, or will be listening to this. We're getting a lot of good momentum. Accountants and bookkeepers are loving everything that we're doing at the moment, which is great. So it's just been a bit of getting used to Australian life again, up on the Gold Coast, which I can't really complain about. it's wonderful. So yeah.
Lead a fast life.
Yeah, well, it feels like a slow life, if I'm honest. I feel like it was a fast life. And then my 12 months in London was very slow, and we were contemplating, could we even get back to Australia one day, because that didn't seem possible. And now we're in the Gold Coast. I feel like I am locked in Queensland, but it's not the worst place to be locked in.
Fair enough. So for those listening in, what's quite interesting is I live in Brisbane, but I actually grew up on the Gold Coast. So it's been nice to see a number of people move to the Gold Coast. It is an interesting place, but has a lovely community with it. And it's a nice place to be locked into.
Look, it's a nice place. And I think for context, like, I used to catch the plane as often as some people catch the bus, right? So now I don't catch a plane or a bus, and I just sit at my desk all day, and I'm not used to that. So that has been interesting for the last 18 months as I make that adjustment. But I'm embracing and doing as much as I can, like everyone else. I think we're all having it. Everyone's going through their own journey when it comes to this COVID thing and what it means to life and how we do our life. So yeah, it's been interesting for me, or not as interesting as it used to be, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to Dax Shepard on his podcast.
He's so funny.
He suggested that he likes to lead his life as if he's being shot out of a cannon. And I did think, sounds like Trent McLaren's life sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I remember the days of, like, going to Latvia for 2 days, coming back, and then going straight on stage with Wayne in Sydney for some sort of conference, and being like so jet lagged, and Wayne just kind of running away with it as he does and taking over. You got a plan, and then Wayne's got his own plan, and he just kind of runs off. And I was too tired and jet lagged to do anything about it. So, I agree. I like it. It's fun, fast.
Yeah,
and
that sort of electricity and excitement is very fun, and we are missing it. But what has been really interesting, if we sort of circle back to the accountech world, in the last year, the amount of money in the industry and the number of acquisitions and mergers that have been happening. And I've been posting in the mastermind group almost daily of another acquisition and merger. So which ones have come across your radar that sort of are worth mentioning and you've been interested in?
Well, it's the great consolidation. And I think this was always due to happen, because when, Xero, Mile to an extent, when these accounting software platforms built out the ecosystem, and I'll keep it on Xero because really that was what started the drive for all these things. They built out their core product. They then had these ecosystem marketplace pop up and say, hey, we can do that part better. And that was a pain in their business, their environment. We can do it better. So they did. And then you start to, no different to, I think, what Apple and I think Amazon also do this, looking at where all the money is going in their marketplace, can then make a decision on, well, do we want to bring that into our products and either compete with it, or do we want to buy something that's already there because it's too hard to build and compete with? And that is happening a lot this year. There's a lot of, there's another one the other week, one that was probably a little bit close to my old space when I think about the recent Sage acquisition. It's interesting looking at that dynamic of why they decide to build and where does that play a bigger part of the strategy. And it very much is a giant chess game on how these software providers think about, how do we better service our accountants? How do we better service our clients? What legislational changes are coming in the next 12 to 18 months that we want to try and take advantage of? And it all stems back to, revenue commercialization at the end of it. Like, they're buying it to make a buck out of it. I heard some awesome stories when I was at Intuit about some of the acquisitions they were making and the billions of dollars they were going to make out of like a three-way upsell between 3 or 4 different products. And my mind was just blowing. Like, this is awesome. Anyway, this is why I love accounting tech and the great consolidation. So, I ramble on all of that because it is interesting to see what's going on. And I always want to understand the why and where does that fall within the strategy for some. Intuit and MailChimp, very interesting play. That was probably the big one a lot of people may have not expected.
No. Absolutely.
I don't actually.
Even the employees of MailChimp, I don't think expected it.
No, but at the end of the day, there's a founder that has to make a decision on when they want to exit one day. And that obviously offer for MailChimp's founder was the right time. It was the right time for him, and maybe it wasn't 3 years ago. And COVID does a lot of strange things to people, as we've said. It's been a really tough, strenuous time. It wasn't too surprising for me knowing how big MailChimp is and the role it plays, especially in that North American space. When I think about how big that customer database is, and for Intuit going, well, really, if all we're doing is buying a customer list that we can build trust with and market to, that will help us increase and sell our QBO licenses. It helps strengthen their overall market. It also means for the QBO customers that don't use MailChimp, hey, now we can cross-sell you into something, and you've got this full stack of your accounting, which is now tied to your marketing. It's especially in that North America space.
Apparently, MailChimp has some feature within it that its emails don't go to spam. So a lot of emails, that is an issue. They go to spam, and some interesting feature within there, they don't go to spam. And the other thing with MailChimp, which is a CRM newsletter solution for those listening in, it also has extended to offer a light e-commerce option there. So you are able to actually use it and sell on it. And so it's actually building in and buying in that e-commerce element there.
And you're going to think, because MailChimp started as, again, an email marketing system. I think we look at SurveyMonkey, which rebranded because they were no longer about surveys. They were doing a lot more in that space. I think MailChimp, when I think of the Shopifys of the world, I see MailChimp becoming a competitor for a Shopify down the track maybe. And it probably will be a rebrand because it's not just about email marketing anymore, right? And that MailChimp can be a little bit turning away from that. In terms of your point around the spam piece, I think that technology is evolving quite a lot. If you look at, if you remember, Basecamp launched their new service, which was Hey emails, and the idea of that was to try and help reduce and prevent spam, and you're only getting emails from people that you actually know and do business with. I think there's a lot of cool things going on in that space all the time at the moment, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those listening in, Trent mentioned the Sage acquisition. Sage acquired GoProposal, which is an engagement letter solution, and Trent used to work for Practice Ignition, which was a competitor of GoProposal there. So very interesting acquisition because, again, made sense, was shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I sent a few messages to some of the guys I knew at Sage, guys and girls I knew at Sage, and I said, way to break my LinkedIn feed for a couple of days. It was very enjoyable to see. I think overall, it's good for everyone is probably what I would say. I think it's good for obviously the James and Paul GoProposal founders. They're going to do quite well out of this. I think for Sage, they're always looking for ways to probably rein back in some of that market share. I think specifically for me, this acquisition was more intent for their UK market more than anything else, specifically to do with a lot of the changes going on with MTD, which is making tax digital, UK legislational changes in the coming 18 to 24 months. So very strategic play for them. I think I can't speak to it too much. I'm not at the PI side anymore, but I think overall, from what I can gather, I think they were also happy about the acquisition. I think it makes sense for everyone. I think everyone wins in that scenario. I think, GoProposal's customers should benefit from this. So, and it sounds like from what I've seen that they want to put more team members in that business so that they can continue to build out the product. But I think that's always the fear. That's always the fear when you're not favorite accounting software buys a system that you love, is that you're like, but wait, what's going to happen? How does this work now? I think similar happens when we see Mile buy products that have been predominantly, based in the Xero ecosystem. And I'm trying to think of what the last one was.
Greatsoft they acquired, didn't they?
See, now that caused a few ruffles.
Yeah. So Greatsoft was working in the enterprise level for people listening in, and Xero was getting very tightly involved with them. And then all of a sudden, it's gone under review, etc. So you've also, Trent, had a lot of news coming out of the DiviPay side. So would you like to share some of the new features and functionality you've got from to tell us about?
Well, I was pretty excited by it, and everyone else seemed to resonate with it. If anyone was following along on my LinkedIn this week, which I often share quite a lot on, we had a big announcement with Slip, which is a digital smart receipt company, into DiviPay. Now, I haven't fact checked it, but I'm going to call it out. And if someone hears this and says, Trent, you're wrong, tell me about it. But as far as I can tell, this is a world first. No one else in the world can actually do what we've done in terms of creating a loop from a payment being made and that data from the receipt getting sent to DiviPay into your favorite accounting software. And what that means is that your client's team don't need the physical receipt at all. Because when I make a payment at a Slip merchant, that digital receipt is sent to DiviPay. The data is sent to DiviPay, not the receipt that we're scanning. We're getting the actual data of the transaction, which will allow us to automatically code it to the right category, split the GST automatically. Like, we're getting all this info, the raw data, not the receipt. We're not relying on machine learning to OCR it and try and determine where it should go. The raw data straight to DiviPay so that we know exactly what we need to do with it. And that's what we announced last week and broke. Australian Financial Review picked it up. Canberra Online News picked it up, which was quite fun for me being an ex-Canberran. I thought, this is great. Lots of different media.
The Cloud Stories podcast picked it up.
And the Cloud Stories podcast. Yeah, it's been awesome news and a really cool innovation that doesn't exist anywhere else. Not in the UK, not in the US that I've seen. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. And that's really cool because in this market in Australia, what we do is very, very new in the Australian market, which is weird to say because Australia is very progressive in a lot of things. But when it came to virtual cards, I find we're actually 2 or 3 years behind what countries like the UK have been doing for a long time already. So, yeah, jazzed. Jazz hands excited.
The business owner, do they need to sign up to both DiviPay and to Slip?
Just to DiviPay. So you get the benefit you get the benefit of Slip just by being a DiviPay customer. So the only thing that this is the beginning, right? The beginning of the end of receipts is what I would say. We're at the very start. So Slip, if you go to the Slip website, it's SLYP because they're very tricky and clever like that. You go to their website, they will give you a list of the merchants they currently work with. You could test this out at Chemist Warehouse, Harris Farm, General Pants, I think, as well. There's a few in there that you can go and test this out in right now. That list is expanding every single week. So if you're an accountant, bookkeeper listening, and you've got clients that have rolls of receipts that they actually purchase and use, you should actually tell all of your clients to sign up with Slip because A, it is cheaper than a paper receipt. B, it is a much greener solution. We're not having to print receipts anymore. We can go green and incorporate digital receipts. And then C, you will love this as an accountant or bookkeeper. You're now helping the fact that we can get this digitization of transactions happening from the moment the payment happens. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. It's pretty cool.
So the business owner doesn't need to sign up to Slip, but you're encouraging them to put Slip on their phone and to actually use it.
I'm encouraging them to sign up to Slip if they are a hospitality retail business that normally prints receipts out. I'm saying you should sign up to Slip and incorporate it into your point of sale systems. And I'm asking, accounting firms, if you've got clients that do print paper receipts, introduce them to Slip so we can help speed up this adoption of digital smart receipts, which will only then benefit everyone as a result.
Absolutely. And so, if you do need to explain it to your business owners, just let them listen to this podcast and hopefully that will all explain it. And I actually have a friend who used to work for Shopper Docket, which was the vouchers on the back of the Shopper Dockets. Oops, maybe no longer. And I would like to highlight, in Australia, digital receipts are perfectly legal. You do not need to keep the actual paper receipt. Digital receipts are legally legal. It's perfectly legal to do that storage.
Yes.
And because it's interesting, I was on a webinar in Malaysia yesterday and we were running it. Then all of a sudden we realized digital receipts weren't acceptable in Malaysia. But that's just something that, they will have to go through and deal with. It's an evolution. And so we're there with that. That's right.
My final kind of point to add, if people are kind of like, is this thing got legs? This is going to work. This has been fully endorsed by the big 4 major banks in Australia. So NAB actually rolled this out only a couple of weeks ago. They've already got CBA, ANZ and Westpac on board to do a similar rollout sometime this year. We were very lucky to get DiviPay up there sooner. I think it's because we're a little bit smaller and nimble, so we can actually do things a little bit quicker. But all the banks are getting on board with this. This is something that, as I said, in 12 to 18 months, the way we think about receipts will drastically change, and it starts with integrations like what we announced last week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll let you know that I've been using my DiviPay virtual card the last few weeks. So what I've been finding it useful for was setting it up and actually allocating it to someone to actually encourage them to buy a present for themselves. So so some of my I wanted to help them buy a present for themselves, to thank them for something, and they've actually just inhaled it and sort of within seconds of receiving it had already bought something for themselves. Because as people are aware, during this pandemic time, shipping is very slow and complicated, and so rather than me send them a gift box of something, I've used it that way. And just after I get off this call, I'm actually going to set up a DiviPay card for the company in Malaysia who got me to speak to them to thank them. And they said, send up some money for a lunch. They're going to have a virtual lunch together because they're not allowed to come together. So that they're all apart. And they're like, well, how about you guys a virtual lunch? And that's a lovely way to do it.
It's a lovely way to do it. It's actually the thing I recommend all of our DiviPay partners to do. Set up your DiviPay card and throw a party. Like, get everyone involved, give them all a card with $20 each, go to your shop, buy your beer, wine, cookies, non-alcoholic beverages, whatever you want. You've got the power, right? You've got the card. Because it's such a cool way to enjoy the tech and see how it all works. When we get back to events, no one will be surprised to hear. I'm very excited to throw more big, large parties where everyone just gets their own DiviPay card and they can just spend whatever they want at the bar and you don't have to worry about a bar tab. And I'm like, this is perfect. Everyone gets to drink and test it out at the same time. Water or beer, again, I'm not advocating for alcohol all the time, but
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, look, it's a much simpler way, and many people have just said, wow, this is great, and they've inhaled it, in fact. So I'd also like to talk about what's recently happened, and I think this is a really smart idea, is people are going back and looking at their accounting apps or their accounting solution and identifying what information from within there that they can release to the accountants and bookkeepers community in an anonymized and aggregated way, but actually gives us powerful information. So the first one I would like to touch on here is Practice Protect, which is a cybersecurity solution specifically for accounting and bookkeeping firms, and it's actually an international solution available there. And what they've released is it's called the Cloud Apps for Accounting Firms Report 2021, powered by Practice Protect and the Chartered Accountants Australia, New Zealand, the CA Catalyst program, which listeners would know I'm very involved with. So you've had a look at this report, Trent. What did you think of it?
I actually really enjoyed it, and I think for all the reasons you said before, because a lot of the report, like when we think about the awards and the app awards and things like that, everyone in the back of their mind is always second guessing, like, did they win that award because they were the best or because they knew a person and they did a handshake or whatever? I enjoy that this report is purely based on data of people logging in to the software, and that's what we're relying on. We're looking at how many users, and again, you're looking at it from this is Practice Protect's point of view, right? So, maybe there's an element where a lot of their customers sit within a particular part of the community. If they are the Xero community, then some of these results aren't too surprising to me compared to maybe a MyOb community like Bubble or the Reckon Bubble. Would these results differ?
Yes.
And I don't even know if that's covered in here, but it would be interesting to see if there was a lean.
It does touch on, because it's over 1,170 firms. They've looked at what apps they are using, and then they've pulled it out and broken it up and show us what percentage of apps are being used. Let's see. I think it primarily did say it was Xero, but some other ones, and anything desktop they can't ascertain because it doesn't fall within the scope of Practice Protect, I imagine.
Yeah. Totally. And as I said, there wasn't some of the categories I wasn't too surprised about in terms of who the front runners were and are, because I think that in the marketing side of things, that's been pretty apparent. I always look at the app ecosystem of like, you've got your top 5 or 10 that are just kind of killing it because either everyone's already using it or you can see that they're getting really good traction. They've got their act together. It's a great report. I really enjoyed reading it. I think the team did a good job. It was good to see Sholto flexing his communication writing skills again. I haven't seen that man for a little while. So it was good to see him back in the fold.
Yeah, and it actually, one of the things it did highlight to me was a few solutions that I hadn't heard of that were probably not being used by many people, but they are being used. So it's worth investigating because sometimes, they're coming in at a different price point. So like Adobe Sign digital signatures are sitting at 56.5%. Anicha's sitting at 2.5%, which they've only been around for a year, but the price point is quite different. So it's worth taking a look at there. And it's categorized, so you can jump in and review whatever your next thing is or what your current thing is there. And DiviPay got a mention too, didn't it?
I did see that. I was very excited. And Lethal Lee at All In Advisory, shout out to those girls for winning Cloud Firm of the Year yesterday. Well done. But yeah, I was very excited to see DiviPay's only mention was in Lee's essential app stack, and I look forward to seeing the changes in 12 months' time to how that unfolds. But I was, from a biased standpoint, because I am on the DiviPay front at the moment, that usage by category, looking at all the apps that accounting firms are most using, the fact that expense management and payment services was the top 2. Very encouraging for a new app like DiviPay that plays very heavily into the spend and expense management piece. These are tools that are used by accountants and bookkeepers across the country. Our mission is to help building, really good tools that allow firms to process payments securely. We want people to be able to have one place to pay all their bills, to make all their payments, and similar for their clients. To see those categories weighted so high was awesome, was very, very cool to see, and definitely help influence our product strategy and our emphasis for the next couple of quarters based on, not just purely based on this report, but it definitely helps.
Yeah, and it's interesting in that the usage by category actually goes up to 120%. So I don't know how but there's nothing up there. But it's interesting, it's only 68%. So even in expense management, only hits 68%. So that's 32% of people's not using anything. And that's surprising. At least I guess they're using the protection that Practice Protect gives them, but nothing else there. So interesting report to jump into. And I'll jump over to another report that has come out. Perhaps people haven't seen it as much. As people know, as you may be aware, Sin7 purchased Order Hive and Unleashed. So those 3 inventory solutions are now together, and they recently went in, deep dived into their actual analytics, and they have produced a report. It's the Inventory and Order Management Trends Report, and it's talking about how product sellers adapted to change and sold more. So I won't jump into too much of it, but I do encourage you, if you are sitting in the inventory space or interested in that inventory space, you jump in and take a look at that. And it covers a lot more solutions, not just, Xero's only, I think, 15% of it. So it's going into QuickBooks Desktop, MYOB Desktop, Sage Desktop. Oh goodness, there's a few desktops in there. QuickBooks Enterprise, etc. So there's a few other solutions in there worth having a look at. But I'm always pushing for people to take more interest in inventory because I think it's a really important area, especially for our small business. It's only going to get more important.
I think just the overall headline of that, what we were leading into, is another example of this great consolidation though, right? Like you had some really good inventory-based systems and it was like, do I use Dia? Do I use Unleashed? Do I use Sin7? What's the right one? So to see them all coming together into one place is not surprising because that we think about, I guess, MYOB and Reckon were the 2 powerhouses for 20, 30 years before, there's a few other ones in between here and there, wherever. And then Xero came along because there was a disgruntled community that were just ready to move. But I did my MBA thesis on this, right? Like I actually had to analyze all of Xero's annual reports for 12 years worth of data. And it was very interesting how this all came about. But this consolidation has to happen. Eventually, we're going to get to a similar scenario where there is only one or two major players until we can continue to keep innovating. The bigger will get bigger, and they will keep bundling up, is my guess.
I feel like I'm on the call with the accounting philosopher.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking about this stuff, but I talk about it with so many people. So
yeah, I agree with you, and you've done the data analysis, and they sprout and then they come together, and it's evolution, and we've seen a lot of it in the.
I think this has happened for years already, though, right? Like same thing happened to Facebook. They bought WhatsApp, they bought Instagram, they bought all these other bits and pieces, and they're just.
And about a week ago, everyone worked out what they own WhatsApp as well. Like, yeah.
That's So interesting times.
Absolutely. So, Trent, is there anything else you'd like to share today?
I mean, what else do I want to share? I'm moving to a new house next week. No, that's not what you want to know about.
Congratulations on moving into a new house.
Thank you. I'm moving down to Currumbin. I'm very excited. That is going to be a fun time. There's always lots going on in our neighbourhood. We're launching DiviPay very soon. That's going to be fun for us.
Yeah.
So, and you actually made a comment that got me very interested. I'm actually going to talk to you about this after this, I think. But yeah, like if our mission, as I said before, is how do we help people find more ways to make payments? Well, we're incorporating DiviPay as a method for bill payments. We're also looking at Forex in terms of bill payments specifically.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting as that comes about. But yeah, no, we're just.
I think it's the BPay and then the batch payments of BPay. People are quite interested in the opportunities to do that because, again, that can be a massive time saver if you've got that securely set up.
And from what I know, that seems to be the case of what we're building in terms of that's what it's going to allow us to unlock. So I'm this is only recently, I'm working on a project at the moment, getting very close with our development team on our sprint planning, specifically developer sprint planning, specifically on our accounting integrations and making sure we're building consistency across the board in all of the platforms that we do integrate with. And BPay, as well as the way we do bill, supply management, that's all sitting under something I'm looking at the moment, which is very fun. So I'm enjoying getting close. I always enjoy being close to the product anyway, but it's been really cool to get close to our development team and help work with them on how we're building, what we're building, and then obviously speaking to partners and customers to really make sure we're resonating and hitting off a lot of the time I just chat to people like Paul Murray and he'd just tell me what he'd love to see and I just take that and run away with it. So yeah, he's awesome for that stuff.
So that for people listening in, that's Paul Murray from AccountKit based in Adelaide, or Radelaide as the Adelaideans prefer to call it.
They do.
So Trent, how can people get in contact with you?
If they would like to get in contact with me, they can find me on LinkedIn, just Trent McLaren. I'm on Twitter, Trent McLaren. I've got an email address, which is trent@divipay.com, and I read and respond to all my own emails. So I'd love for you to send me an email. Please do. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me today, Trent. And if anyone wants to get in contact with me, I'm Heather Smith AU, because there's like 80,000 Heather Smiths. But I'm Heather Smith AU across all social media channels. Thank you very much for bantering with me today, Trent.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to the Accounting Innovation and Technology Buzz with Trent McLaren. Please let either I or Trent know what you thought of it. We would love your feedback. You've been listening to the Cloud Stories podcast. I encourage you to subscribe and leave a 5-star review so other people can find the podcast. Stay up to date with the curated content I'm sharing by signing up to the Accounting Apps newsletter available at heathersmithau.com. And if you'd like to find out about how I work with accounting apps, please visit endorsementdisclosure.com. Thank you for listening.